The execution chamber buzzed with alien voices, their strange languages creating a symphony of anticipation. Zara pressed herself against the cold metal bars of her cell, watching the crowd gather in the amphitheater beyond. Her blue-tinged skin had turned pale with fear, and her large violet eyes darted between the faces of species she had never seen before. The Galactic Tribunal had found her guilty of crimes she barely understood. As a young Velkari refugee, she had stolen food to survive on the space station orbiting Proxima 7. What she didn't know was that the fruit she took belonged to a sacred grove protected by 3 different alien governments. The theft had caused a diplomatic incident that nearly sparked a war between the Zephyrian Empire and the Crystalline Collective. Ambassador Thexron, a towering reptilian creature with scales that shifted color based on his emotions, stood before the gathered crowd. His scales currently displayed deep crimson bands of satisfaction. "Citizens of the Galactic Council," his voice boomed through translation devices. "Today we witness justice served. The criminal Zara of Velkos will pay for her transgression with her life, as demanded by ancient law." The crowd cheered, a mixture of clicks, roars, and harmonic tones that made Zara's sensitive ears ring. She had learned enough of the common galactic language during her imprisonment to understand that most beings saw her execution as entertainment. To them, she was just another primitive life form from a backwater world that had recently joined the galactic community. Captain Marcus Chen stood at the back of the amphitheater, his human features standing out among the sea of alien faces. He had arrived on the station just hours earlier aboard the Earth vessel Endeavour, carrying supplies and cultural exchange materials. The sight of the young alien girl awaiting execution made his stomach churn. He had read the case files during his journey to the station, and the punishment seemed grotesquely disproportionate to the crime. Humans were still newcomers to the galactic stage, having achieved faster-than-light travel only 50 years earlier. Most alien species viewed them as an interesting but ultimately insignificant addition to the cosmic community. Earth's representatives had to be careful not to overstep their bounds or risk losing their recently granted membership in the Galactic Council. As the execution preparations continued, Marcus noticed something that others had missed. Zara's movements, her facial expressions, the way she held herself despite her fear. She reminded him of his own daughter back on Earth. The thought of any child facing death for stealing food to survive triggered something deep within his human psyche, something that the aliens around him couldn't understand. The executioner, a mechanical construct designed by the efficient Nexari species, rolled into the chamber. Its chrome surface reflected the lights from dozens of different alien technologies, and its multiple arms extended various instruments of death. The crowd grew quiet with anticipation as Ambassador Thexron raised his clawed hand to signal the beginning of the ceremony. According to the laws established by the Treaty of Vorten, Thexron announced, "Any being found guilty of crimes against the sacred properties of member species shall face immediate termination. However, our legal codes do allow for one final tradition before sentence is carried out." Marcus felt his heart racing. He had studied galactic law extensively during his diplomatic training, and he knew what was coming next. The right of claim was an ancient tradition that predated even the oldest galactic civilizations, supposedly originating from a species that had long since vanished from the cosmos. If any citizen of the Galactic Council wishes to claim responsibility for the condemned, they may do so now, Thexron continued, his scales shifting to a pattern that suggested he considered this a mere formality. "However, know that claiming the condemned makes you responsible for their actions and any future transgressions. The penalty for false claiming is exile from all council territories." Silence filled the amphitheater. No being had invoked the right of claim in over 3 centuries, and certainly no one would risk their standing in galactic society for a primitive Velkari refugee. The mechanical executioner continued its approach toward Zara's cell, its sensors scanning her biological signatures to determine the most efficient method of termination. Zara closed her eyes and whispered a prayer in her native language, asking her ancestors to guide her spirit home to the crystal caves of Velkos. She thought of her family, lost when their ship was destroyed during the Velkari diaspora, and wondered if she would see them again in whatever afterlife awaited her species. The executioner's primary arm extended toward the cell lock, ready to extract the condemned for processing. Ambassador Thexron smiled, satisfied that justice would be served and that the diplomatic crisis could finally be resolved. The crowd leaned forward in anticipation, their various sensory organs focused on the spectacle about to unfold. Marcus took a deep breath and stepped forward from the crowd, his voice cutting through the silence like a blade through silk. "I invoke the right of claim," he declared in fluent galactic common, his words echoing through the translation systems and reaching every being in the amphitheater. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Gasps, roars, and electromagnetic pulses of surprise rippled through the crowd, as hundreds of alien faces turned toward the human who had dared to interrupt their entertainment. Ambassador Thexron's scale shifted to deep purple, indicating shock and confusion, while the executioner's programming caused it to halt its advance and await new instructions. Zara's eyes snapped open, and she stared at the strange bipedal creature who had just risked everything for her. She had heard of humans but had never seen one before. His features were unlike any species she knew, with smooth skin, bilateral symmetry, and eyes that seemed to hold depths of emotion that most galactic species had bred out of themselves millennia ago. The amphitheater erupted into chaos as representatives from various species began arguing about the validity of the claim. Some insisted that humans were too new to galactic society to invoke such ancient rights, while others argued that membership in the council granted all traditional privileges, regardless of how recently a species had joined. Through it all, Marcus kept his eyes locked on Zara's, trying to convey reassurance despite knowing that his impulsive decision had potentially doomed them both. He had acted on pure human instinct, driven by emotions that most galactic species had long since abandoned in favor of cold logic and efficiency. Now he would have to face the consequences of letting his humanity guide his actions, in a universe that had little patience for such primitive motivations. The council chamber fell into an uncomfortable silence as the various alien representatives processed what had just occurred. Ambassador Thexron's scales had shifted to a mottled pattern of orange and black, indicating both anger and uncertainty. He had never encountered a situation where an outsider species had invoked such ancient laws, especially not for a condemned criminal from another world. Marcus stood firmly in the center of the amphitheater, feeling the weight of countless alien gazes upon him. His diplomatic training had taught him to remain calm under pressure, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he waited for the council's response, knowing that his career and possibly his life hung in the balance. Counselor HFY, a floating jellyfish-like creature from the ethereal reaches, drifted forward with graceful tentacle movements. Her voice emerged from a biomechanical translator that converted her electromagnetic pulses into audible speech. "Human Marcus Chen of Earth," she intoned. "Do you understand the full implications of invoking the right of claim? This action binds your fate to that of the condemned Velkari." "I understand completely," Marcus replied, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "According to galactic law, I accept full responsibility for Zara of Velkos and any actions she may take in the future. Her crimes become my crimes, her debts become my debts, and her fate becomes my fate." The mechanical executioner remained motionless, its programming uncertain how to proceed with this unprecedented development. Its sensors continued to scan both Marcus and Zara, analyzing their biological signatures and calculating various probability matrices for different outcomes. Zara pressed her face against the bars of her cell, studying the human who had risked everything for her. In Velkari culture, such selfless acts were considered the highest form of honor, reserved only for family members or life-bonded partners. She couldn't understand why this alien stranger would sacrifice his safety for someone he had never met. Ambassador Thexron stepped forward, his massive frame casting a shadow over Marcus. "This is highly irregular," he hissed, his forked tongue tasting the air around the human. "The right of claim has not been invoked in centuries and never by a species so new to our community. How do we know this human even understands our laws?" "He has passed all required diplomatic examinations," Counselor HFY responded, consulting a holographic display that materialized before her. "Earth's representatives have demonstrated proficiency in galactic law and customs. The claim appears to be legally valid." Dr. Kimari, a crystalline being whose body refracted light into beautiful patterns, chimed in with musical tones that the translators converted to words. "However, we must consider the precedent this sets. If newer species can simply claim criminals to avoid justice, It undermines the entire foundation of our legal system. Marcus seized the opportunity to present his argument. With respect, honored counselors, I'm not trying to avoid justice. I'm questioning whether execution is truly just for a child who stole food to survive. In human culture, we believe that punishment should fit the crime and that mercy is often a greater demonstration of strength than vengeance. A murmur rippled through the crowd as translation devices struggled to convey the concept of mercy to species that had largely abandoned such emotional considerations. Many galactic civilizations had evolved beyond what they considered primitive emotional responses, viewing them as obstacles to logical decision-making. Executor Prime Zixthan, a biomechanical hybrid representing the synthetic collective, spoke with a voice that sounded like grinding gears. Emotion-based reasoning is inefficient and leads to inconsistent outcomes. The law is clear. Crimes against sacred property carry a death sentence regardless of the perpetrator's age or motivation. But that's exactly my point, Marcus countered, feeling his human passion rising. A legal system that doesn't account for context, motivation, or proportionality isn't justice, it's just ritualized revenge. The girl was starving, alone, and desperate. She didn't know the fruit was sacred. Where's the justice in killing a child for an honest mistake? Zara's translator implant allowed her to follow the conversation, and she was amazed by the human's willingness to challenge the entire galactic legal system on her behalf. No one had ever stood up for her before, not even members of her own species who had abandoned her when her family died. Ambassador Thexron's scales flashed bright red, indicating rage. You dare question laws that have maintained order across the galaxy for millennia? Your species has been spacefaring for barely half a century, yet you presume to lecture civilizations that were exploring the cosmos before your world had developed written language? Yes, I do, Marcus replied firmly, his voice carrying across the amphitheater. Because being older doesn't automatically make something right. Humans may be newcomers to your galactic community, but we've learned something in our short history that many of your ancient civilizations seem to have forgotten. That the measure of a society isn't how efficiently it punishes the weak, but how courageously it protects them. The words hit the alien assembly like a shockwave. Several species had never encountered such direct confrontation of their fundamental beliefs, especially from what they considered a primitive culture. Some delegates began arguing among themselves in their native languages, their translation devices struggling to keep up with the rapid exchange of complex philosophical concepts. Counselor Vexhai raised her tentacles for silence. The human raises intriguing points, but we cannot simply ignore established law. However, the right of claim has been properly invoked, which creates a legal obligation we must address. What exactly does this mean for both of them? Asked Dr. Kamari, her crystalline form pulsing with curious light patterns. Executor Prime Zixthan accessed his vast legal databases before responding. According to ancient protocols, the claimant becomes legally responsible for the condemned. If the council accepts the claim, both parties must undergo the trial of worthiness to determine if the bond is genuine. If they pass, the original sentence is commuted, but both individuals become bound by the laws of shared fate. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. Shared fate meant that any future crimes committed by either party would result in punishment for both. He would be risking not just his current safety, but his entire future. However, looking at Zara's hopeful expression through the prison bars, he knew he couldn't back down now. I accept those terms, he declared without hesitation. Amphitheater erupted in chaos once again as various species debated the wisdom of allowing such an unprecedented situation to proceed. Some argued that it would set a dangerous precedent, while others were curious to see how this uniquely human approach to justice might play out. Ambassador Thexron realized that the situation had spiraled beyond his control. The diplomatic crisis he had hoped to resolve with a simple execution had now become a complex legal and philosophical challenge that could reshape how the galaxy viewed justice itself. His scales shifted to deep blue, indicating resignation. Very well, he announced with obvious reluctance. The council will convene tomorrow to formally review this claim and determine the parameters for the trial of worthiness. Until then, both the human and the Velkari will remain in custody. As security forces moved to escort Marcus to a holding cell adjacent to Zara's, he managed to catch her eye one final time. Despite the fear and uncertainty that lay ahead, He saw something in her violet gaze that made his decision worthwhile. Hope. For the first time since her capture, the young Velkari refugee had reason to believe that she might actually survive to see another day. The holding cells aboard the galactic station were designed to accommodate various alien physiologies, with adjustable atmospheric controls and basic amenities. Marcus found himself in a sterile white chamber next to Zara's cell, separated by a transparent energy barrier that allowed them to see and speak to each other. Zara sat cross-legged on her sleeping platform, studying the human who had saved her life. Her violet eyes held a mixture of gratitude and confusion as she tried to understand his motivations. In the dim lighting of the detention area, her blue-tinged skin seemed to shimmer with an otherworldly beauty that reminded Marcus of Earth's oceans under moonlight. "Why did you help me?" she asked softly, her voice carrying the musical quality common to her species. The translation implant made her words understandable, but couldn't hide the emotion behind them. Marcus settled on his own sleeping platform, facing her through the barrier. "Because it was the right thing to do. Where I come from, we don't execute children for stealing food no matter what law says it's okay." "But you don't know me," Zara protested. "I could be dangerous. I could be exactly the criminal they say I am." "Are you?" Marcus asked simply. Zara shook her head, tears forming in her large eyes. "I was just hungry. When my family's ship was destroyed, I managed to escape in a small pod. I drifted for weeks before the station's tractor beam caught me. I had eaten nothing but emergency rations for so long that when I saw those beautiful fruits, I couldn't stop myself." Marcus felt his heart ache for the young refugee. Her story reminded him of human children during wartime, forced to survive in circumstances no child should face. "Tell me about your family," he said gently. For the next several hours, Zara shared her story. She spoke of her parents, both scientists who had been working to find a new home for their people after their planet began dying from a stellar radiation event. She described her younger brother, who had loved to collect crystalline formations and dream of becoming an explorer. Her voice broke when she recounted the attack by space pirates that had destroyed their research vessel, leaving her as the sole survivor. "The Velkari were never warriors," she explained. "We were artists, scientists, and philosophers. When the crisis came, we had no way to defend ourselves. Most of my people scattered across the galaxy, hoping to find places that would accept refugees." Marcus listened intently, gradually understanding the broader context of her situation. The galactic community seemed to have little patience for displaced populations, especially those from primitive worlds that couldn't offer valuable resources or technologies in return for sanctuary. As the station's artificial day cycle shifted to night mode, their conversation turned to the upcoming trial. Neither of them fully understood what the trial of worthiness would entail, but Marcus had spent his remaining free time researching galactic legal precedents using his diplomatic access codes. "From what I could find," he explained, "the trial is designed to test whether the bond between claimant and claimed is genuine. Ancient records suggest it involves both mental and physical challenges designed to reveal true character." Zara looked worried. "What if I fail? What if my weaknesses cause you to be punished?" "Then we face whatever comes together," Marcus replied firmly. "That's what claiming someone means. We succeed or fail as a team." The concept of unconditional loyalty was foreign to Zara's recent experiences but deeply familiar to her cultural background. Velkari society had been built on community bonds and mutual support before the diaspora scattered her people. For the first time in months, she felt like she belonged somewhere. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Dr. Elena Vasquez, Marcus's second-in-command aboard the Earth vessel Endeavor. The security system allowed her entry after confirming her diplomatic credentials. Her expression was a mixture of concern and exasperation as she approached Marcus's cell. "Captain, what the hell were you thinking?" she demanded in rapid Spanish before switching to Galactic Common for Zara's benefit. "The entire council is in chaos. Half of them want to expel humanity from the galactic community for disrupting their legal proceedings." Marcus stood to face his colleague and friend. "I was thinking that executing a child for petty theft is wrong, regardless of which species makes the law. Your noble intentions might get us all banned from galactic space," Elena replied sharply. "Earth's government is scrambling to distance themselves from your actions. They're claiming you acted without authorization and exceeded your diplomatic authority. The word stung, but Marcus wasn't surprised. Earth's position in the galactic community was still fragile, and his government would prioritize maintaining their standing over supporting his individual actions. He had expected this possibility when he made his choice. "What's the official position?" he asked quietly. "Earth formally disavows your actions and states that you were acting as a private citizen, not as a representative of human government," Elena recited with obvious reluctance. "However, they're not openly condemning you either. It's political cowardice, but it might be enough to keep humanity in the council." Zara had been following the conversation with growing alarm. "I don't want to cause problems for your entire species," she said urgently. "Maybe I should withdraw my acceptance of the claim." "You can't," Elena interjected. "Once the right of claim is invoked and accepted by the condemned, it becomes legally binding. Both parties are committed to seeing it through to whatever end awaits." Marcus felt a surge of respect for Zara's willingness to sacrifice herself to protect others, even after everything she had suffered. It confirmed his belief that she was worth saving, regardless of the political consequences. "There's something else," Elena continued reluctantly. "I've been monitoring galactic communication channels. Word of this incident is spreading rapidly across all known civilizations. Some species are fascinated by what they're calling human irrationality, while others are angry about the disruption to established order. Any word on what the trial will involve?" Marcus asked. Elena consulted her portable data device. "I managed to access some historical records through our diplomatic channels. The trial of worthiness hasn't been used in over 300 years, but past incidents suggest it involves 3 phases: mental compatibility testing, physical endurance challenges, and something called the revelation of true nature." The description was vague, but Marcus could tell from Elena's expression that she was holding back additional concerns. "What aren't you telling me?" "Historical records show that less than 30% of claimed parties survived the trial," Elena admitted quietly. "The physical challenges are adapted to test the limits of each species involved, and the mental compatibility testing can cause permanent psychological damage if the bond proves false." Zara's face went pale at this revelation, but Marcus reached through the energy barrier as far as the containment field would allow, trying to offer what comfort he could. "We'll face whatever comes," he repeated. "I didn't make this choice lightly." Elena studied both of them carefully before sighing in resignation. "I can see why you did it, Marcus, but I hope you understand what you're risking. This could end badly for both of you, and for humanity's future in galactic society." As Elena prepared to leave, she turned back one final time. "The trial begins tomorrow at the start of the station's day cycle. I'll be there as an observer, along with representatives from dozens of galactic civilizations. The entire galaxy will be watching to see what happens when human emotion meets alien justice." After Elena departed, Marcus and Zara sat in contemplative silence. The weight of responsibility and the unknown dangers ahead pressed down on them both. Yet somehow knowing they would face these challenges together made the burden seem more bearable than either had felt in a long time. The trial chamber was unlike anything Marcus had seen during his diplomatic career. Ancient symbols from countless extinct civilizations covered the walls, glowing with soft bioluminescent light that seemed to pulse in rhythm with some cosmic heartbeat. The space itself defied conventional physics, with gravity fields that shifted and twisted to accommodate beings from different worlds simultaneously. Representatives from over 50 galactic species had gathered to witness this unprecedented event. Some floated in specialized atmospheric bubbles, while others required mechanical suits to survive in the chamber's mixed environment. The diversity was staggering: crystalline entities that sang in harmonic frequencies, gaseous beings that existed as controlled storms, and biomechanical hybrids that blurred the line between organic and artificial life. Marcus and Zara stood together in the center of the chamber, connected by ceremonial bonds that glowed with energy readings from their respective biologies. The bonds were more symbolic than restrictive, but they served as a constant reminder that their fates were now intertwined. Arbiter Kelnara materialized before them, her form shifting between states of matter as her ancient consciousness struggled to maintain physical coherence. She was one of the oldest beings in galactic space, having overseen trials since before most current civilizations had achieved sentience. Her voice resonated directly in their minds, bypassing the need for translation devices. Claimant Marcus Chen of Earth and claimed Zara of Velkos. Her mental voice echoed with the weight of eons. You stand before the confluence of justice and mercy, law and compassion. The trial of worthiness will test not just your bond, but the very nature of your beings. The first phase began immediately as the chamber around them shifted and transformed. The walls became transparent, revealing a vast neural network that stretched throughout the station's core systems. Thousands of fiber optic connections pulsed with data streams from across the galaxy, creating a web of information that contained the collective knowledge and experiences of every civilization in the Council. The mental compatibility assessment requires you to enter a shared consciousness state, Arbiter Kelnara explained. Your minds will be temporarily merged, allowing you to experience each other's memories, fears, hopes, and fundamental nature. Many claimed pairs discover they are incompatible at this stage, resulting in psychological fracture for both parties. Marcus felt a surge of apprehension. Human minds were still largely mysterious even to Earth's own scientists, and he had no idea how his consciousness might interact with an alien neural structure. However, looking at Zara's determined expression, he drew strength from her courage. The neural interface descended from the ceiling, extending filaments that attached to both their heads. The sensation was initially uncomfortable, like tiny insects crawling across his scalp. But then the world exploded into a kaleidoscope of shared experience. Suddenly, Marcus was experiencing Zara's memories as if they were his own. He felt the terror of watching her family's ship explode in the cold vacuum of space, the desperate loneliness of drifting in an escape pod for weeks, and the crushing weight of survivor's guilt that had haunted her every moment since. But he also experienced her wonder at discovering new star systems, her joy in creating crystalline art forms that captured light in impossible ways, and her deep connection to the natural harmony that Velkari culture celebrated. Simultaneously, Zara was living through Marcus's experiences. She felt his childhood on Earth, the loss of his mother to cancer when he was 12, and his determination to explore the cosmos in search of knowledge that might prevent such tragedies. She experienced his military training, his diplomatic education, and the moment he first saw Earth from space, a blue marble of infinite beauty hanging in the darkness. More importantly, she felt his emotions during the previous day's events. She experienced his visceral reaction to seeing her awaiting execution, the way every human instinct had screamed at him to act, and his absolute certainty that protecting the innocent was worth any personal cost. The purity of his motivation overwhelmed her with its intensity. The mental merger deepened, allowing them to share not just memories but fundamental aspects of their personalities. Marcus discovered that beneath Zara's fear and trauma lay an unbreakable core of hope and determination. Despite everything she had suffered, she still believed in the possibility of finding beauty and meaning in existence. Zara, in turn, found that Marcus's sense of justice wasn't just philosophical, but deeply emotional. Humans, she realized, didn't just understand right and wrong intellectually. They felt it with every fiber of their being. The concept of allowing injustice to occur caused him actual physical pain, explaining why he couldn't simply ignore her plight. As their minds synchronized further, they began to share more abstract concepts. Zara showed Marcus the Velkari understanding of cosmic harmony, how all life forms were connected by invisible threads of energy that bound the universe together. Marcus shared humanity's concept of individual dignity, the idea that every sentient being possessed inherent worth regardless of their circumstances or abilities. The watching alien. Delegates monitored their vital signs and neural patterns with fascination. Many had never witnessed such a profound mental compatibility between different species. Most galactic civilizations had evolved beyond such intense emotional connections, viewing them as primitive and inefficient. Ambassador Thexeron's scales displayed patterns of grudging respect as he observed the data streams. Their neural synchronization rates are unprecedented, he admitted to his fellow delegates. I've never seen two beings achieve such deep mental harmony so quickly. Counselor Vexhi's tentacles swayed with curiosity. The human's emotional capacity appears to be enhancing the Velkari's natural empathic abilities. They're creating a feedback loop that amplifies both their strengths. As the mental assessment phase reached its climax, Marcus and Zara found themselves sharing a vision that neither had experienced individually. They saw the galaxy not as a collection of competing species and territories, but as a vast living organism where each civilization represented a vital organ contributing to the whole. They understood with crystalline clarity. The diversity of thought and approach wasn't a weakness to be eliminated, but a strength to be celebrated. When the neural interface finally withdrew, both participants staggered slightly as their individual consciousnesses reasserted themselves. However, they retained a profound understanding of each other that transcended normal communication. They could sense each other's emotions and thoughts without effort, creating a bond deeper than most beings ever experienced. Arbiter Kelnara's form solidified slightly as she processed the unprecedented results. Phase 1 is complete. The mental compatibility between claimant and claimed exceeds all recorded precedents. However, 2 phases remain, each designed to test different aspects of your bond. The chamber began transforming again, walls shifting to reveal a series of physical obstacles that seemed to stretch into infinity. Gravity fields fluctuated wildly, creating zones where the participants would need to navigate through crushing acceleration, weightlessness, and reverse gravity simultaneously. Phase 2 will test your physical compatibility and mutual dependence, the Arbiter announced. You must navigate the labyrinth of trials while maintaining physical contact. If your connection breaks for more than 30 seconds, or if either party becomes unable to continue, both will face the consequences of failure. Marcus squeezed Zara's hand, feeling her squeeze back with determination that matched his own. The mental merger had shown them that together they possessed strengths neither could achieve alone. Now they would discover whether that psychological bond could translate into physical cooperation when faced with seemingly impossible challenges. The watching galaxy held its collective breath as the 2 unlikely partners stepped forward into the labyrinth, their bond about to be tested by forces that had broken countless others throughout galactic history. The labyrinth of trials stretched before them like a nightmare landscape of impossible physics and deadly obstacles. Marcus and Zara stepped forward together, their hands firmly clasped as the chamber sealed behind them. The first challenge appeared immediately, a corridor where gravity rotated every few meters, forcing them to walk on walls and ceilings while maintaining their connection. Zara's Velkari physiology gave her natural advantages in variable gravity conditions. Her species had evolved on a world with unstable gravitational fields, making her inherently more adaptable to spatial disorientation. She guided Marcus through the rotating sections, her touch providing stability when his human inner ear struggled to adjust to the constantly shifting environment. "Feel the pull. Don't fight it," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the humming energy fields that surrounded them. "Let your body flow with the changes instead of resisting them." Marcus trusted her guidance completely, allowing his human tendency toward rigid thinking to give way to the fluid adaptability she demonstrated. Together, they navigated the gravity maze with a grace that surprised the watching delegates. Their mental bond from the previous phase allowed them to anticipate each other's movements, creating a synchronized dance through the impossible geometry. The second obstacle proved more challenging. They emerged into a vast chamber, filled with floating platforms suspended over an abyss that seemed to extend infinitely downward. The platforms moved in complex patterns, requiring precise timing and coordination to traverse. However, each platform could only support the weight of one being at a time. Marcus studied the pattern of movement, his human analytical mind automatically calculating trajectories and timing intervals. "I can see the sequence," he told Zara, "but we'll need to leap between platforms in perfect synchronization to maintain contact." This was where human physical capabilities proved advantageous. Marcus's species had evolved as pursuit predators, giving him superior jumping abilities and spatial coordination compared to most galactic civilizations. He could gauge distances and momentum with instinctive accuracy that complemented Zara's gravitational sensitivity. They began their leap sequence, Marcus using his strength to help propel Zara across longer gaps while she used her natural balance to stabilize their landings. Their hands remained connected throughout the series of jumps, creating a living bridge between platforms as they crossed the seemingly impossible divide. The watching aliens observed with growing amazement as the 2 beings demonstrated capabilities that neither possessed individually. Dr. Kamari's crystalline form pulsed, with excited light patterns as she analyzed their performance. "They're not just cooperating, she announced to her fellow delegates. They're creating emergent abilities through their bond. The third challenge tested their endurance and mutual support under extreme physical stress. They entered a chamber where atmospheric pressure and temperature fluctuated wildly, simulating conditions from dozens of different worlds simultaneously. The environment would have been lethal to either species alone, but together they found ways to survive. When the temperature dropped to levels that would freeze Marcus's human physiology, Zara's body naturally generated biothermal energy that she shared through their physical connection. When atmospheric pressure spiked to levels that would crush Zara's delicate Valkyrie frame, Marcus's robust human cardiovascular system helped regulate the stress on both their bodies. They pressed forward through environmental conditions that would have killed most individual beings, their bond literally keeping each other alive through shared biological resources. The spectacle fascinated galactic observers who had long ago abandoned such intimate physical cooperation in favor of technological solutions. Executor Prime. Sixth, and process the data with mechanical precision. Their biological synchronization is creating survival capabilities beyond standard parameters for either species. This level of symbiotic adaptation should require evolutionary periods measured in millennia, not hours. The final physical challenge brought them to a chamber filled with hostile energy fields that required complex problem-solving under extreme pressure. Ancient defense systems activated around them, sending plasma bolts and force waves designed to test combat coordination between bonded pairs. Marcus's military training activated instinctively as he analyzed threat patterns and defensive positions. His human warrior heritage, honed through countless generations of conflict, allowed him to read the battlefield with tactical clarity. However, direct combat wasn't the solution. The energy weapons were too powerful for any physical being to survive through aggression alone. Zara's artistic sensibilities proved crucial in this moment. Her Valkyrie understanding of harmony and resonance revealed that the defense systems operated on specific frequency patterns. By moving in synchronization with these patterns rather than fighting against them, they could navigate through the deadly maze without triggering the automated responses. Together, they created a solution neither could have achieved alone. Marcus's tactical awareness identified safe zones and movement corridors, while Zara's harmonic sensitivity guided their timing to match the energy rhythms. They danced through the hostile environment like water flowing around stones, their combined abilities turning a deadly combat scenario into an elegant performance. When they finally reached the exit of the physical trials, both were exhausted but triumphant. Their clothing was torn and scorched, their bodies pushed to the limits of endurance, but their connection had never wavered. If anything, the shared hardships had strengthened their bond beyond what either had thought possible. Arbiter Kellanara awaited them in the next chamber, her ancient form radiating approval at their unprecedented success. Phase 2 is complete. You have demonstrated physical compatibility and mutual dependence at levels unprecedented in galactic history. However, the final phase remains, the most dangerous of all. The chamber around them began to transform once again, but this time the changes were subtle and ominous. The walls became mirror-like surfaces that seemed to reflect not their physical forms but something deeper and more fundamental about their natures. The revelation of true nature strips away all pretense and deception, the Arbiter explained solemnly. You will be confronted with the darkest aspects of your own beings, and your bond will be tested by the truth of who you really are beneath your conscious personas. Many claimants discover that their apparent virtue masks underlying selfishness or cruelty. Many claimed parties reveal hidden malevolence that their desperate circumstances have concealed. Marcus felt a chill of apprehension. Every human carried shadows, moments of weakness, selfish desires, and moral compromises that they preferred to keep hidden. He wondered what darkness the trial might reveal about him, and whether Zara would still accept their bond after seeing his true nature exposed. Zara experienced similar fears. Her desperation for survival had led her to consider actions she was ashamed to remember. She worried that the trial might reveal hidden depths of self-interest that would prove her unworthy of Marcus's sacrifice. The mirror walls began to glow with an inner light that seemed to penetrate their very souls. Both participants felt their carefully constructed self-images beginning to dissolve as the final and most terrifying phase of their trial commenced. In moments, the galaxy would witness the ultimate test of their bond, not their compatibility at their best, but their acceptance of each other at their absolute worst. The watching delegates leaned forward with fascination and dread, knowing that they were about to witness either the greatest triumph or the most devastating failure in the history of galactic justice. The fate of two beings hung in the balance, but the implications reached far beyond their individual survival to challenge the very foundations of how civilized society understood law, mercy, and the bonds that connect sentient beings across the vast cosmos. The mirror walls erupted with blinding light that seemed to pierce through flesh and bone, directly into the souls of both participants. Marcus felt his consciousness being pulled apart like layers of an onion. Each protective barrier he had built around his darkest memories and shameful thoughts being stripped away with surgical precision. The first revelation came crashing over him like a tsunami of guilt and regret. He was 7 years old again, watching his younger sister fall from a tree while he stood frozen in fear instead of trying to catch her. The broken arm that followed had been blamed on an accident, but Marcus had always known the truth. He could have prevented her injury if he hadn't been paralyzed by cowardice. Zara experienced the memory as if it were her own, feeling the crushing weight of guilt that Marcus had carried for decades. But instead of judgment, she felt only understanding. She saw how that moment of childhood helplessness had shaped his entire life, driving him to become someone who would never again stand by while others suffered. The mirrors showed more of Marcus's shadows, moments of selfishness during his military service, when he had chosen safer assignments that left riskier missions for others. Times during his diplomatic training, when he had taken credit for colleagues' work to advance his own career. Instances of prejudice against alien species that he had struggled to overcome when humanity first joined the galactic community. Each revelation should have broken their bond, proving that Marcus's heroic gesture was tainted by base human motivations. But Zara felt something unexpected as she witnessed his darkest moments. Not disgust or disappointment, but a deep appreciation for his struggles against his own nature. She saw that his flaws made his courage more meaningful, not less. The mirrors turned their merciless gaze toward Zara, and her own shadows began to emerge. Marcus experienced her memories of the escape pod, where she had briefly considered cannibalizing her deceased brother's remains to survive longer. The shame of that moment had nearly destroyed her, even though she had ultimately chosen to starve rather than commit such desecration. He felt her envy of other Velkari refugees who had found safe harbor, while she remained homeless and desperate. He experienced her brief moment of hatred toward the alien species that had denied her sanctuary. When she had wished for the power to make them suffer, as she had suffered, he saw her darkest fantasy, using stolen weapons to take revenge on those who had condemned her to die for a simple act of survival. But just as Zara had found understanding in his darkness, Marcus felt no judgment toward her shadows. He saw a young being pushed beyond all reasonable limits, struggling to maintain her moral core while facing impossible circumstances. Her moments of weakness only highlighted the strength she had shown by ultimately choosing hope over hatred. The mirrors began reflecting deeper truths, revealing the fundamental nature of each being beneath their conscious personalities. Marcus's core revealed itself as an endless well of protective instinct, a primal need to shield others from harm even at the cost of his own well-being. His heroism wasn't a choice he made consciously. It was the inevitable expression of his deepest nature. Zara's essence showed itself as an unbreakable connection to cosmic harmony, a spiritual understanding that all beings were part of a greater whole. Her forgiveness of those who had wronged her wasn't weakness but wisdom, recognizing that hatred only served to break the universal bonds that connected all life. As the revelation deepened, both participants began to experience something unprecedented. Their individual shadows and light began to merge and balance, creating a combined consciousness that transcended their separate limitations. Marcus's protective strength merged with Zara's harmonic wisdom, while her spiritual insight complemented his practical courage. The watching delegates observed this transformation with amazement that bordered on fear. Counselor Vexhi's tentacles writhed with agitation as she processed the readings from her instruments. "They're not just bonding," she announced in alarm. "They're evolving into something new." Ambassador Thexron's scales displayed deep purple confusion as he struggled to understand what he was witnessing. The neural integration is beyond anything in our historical records. They're creating a shared consciousness while somehow maintaining their individual identities. Dr. Kamari's crystalline form resonated with harmonic frequencies that filled the chamber with ethereal music. This is extraordinary. They're demonstrating a form of symbiotic evolution that should be impossible between different species. Executor. Prime Zixthan's mechanical components whirred frantically as he attempted to process data that defied his logical parameters. Error. Error. Observed phenomena exceed programmed possibility matrices. Unable to classify or predict outcomes. In the mirror chamber, Marcus and Zara had moved beyond individual existence into something greater. They could feel each other's thoughts and emotions as clearly as their own, but without losing their distinct personalities. Instead, they had become a dualistic being, two separate notes that together created perfect harmony. The final test emerged from the mirrors themselves. Images of their greatest fears materialized around them, scenarios where their bond would be tested by impossible choices. Marcus saw Zara forced to choose between saving him or saving her people. Zara saw Marcus having to decide between their relationship and humanity's position in the galactic community. But the tests revealed something that shattered the expectations of every watching alien. Neither Marcus nor Zara would ever be forced to make such choices, because their bond had transcended individual loyalty. They had become living proof that true unity didn't require sacrifice of the self, but transformation of the self into something larger and more beautiful. The mirrors began to fade as Arbiter Kelnara materialized before them, her ancient consciousness struggling to comprehend what she had witnessed. In her eons of existence presiding over countless trials, she had never seen anything approaching this level of spiritual and psychological integration. The revelation of true nature is complete, she announced, her mental voice filled with wonder. You have not only passed the trial of worthiness, you have redefined what the trial itself means. Your bond is genuine beyond any precedent in galactic history. As the mirror chamber dissolved around them, Marcus and Zara found themselves back in the main trial arena, still connected but now forever changed. They looked upon the assembled alien delegates with eyes that held new understanding, not just of each other, but of the cosmic potential for unity across all species and cultures. The galaxy had witnessed something unprecedented. Two beings from different worlds had proven that the bonds between sentient creatures could transcend every boundary: legal, cultural, biological, and spiritual. Their success in the trial represented more than individual vindication. It offered a new model for how civilizations might relate to each other across the vast cosmos. But challenges remained. The Council still needed to decide the implications of their success, and powerful forces within galactic society would resist any changes to the established order. Marcus and Zara had won their immediate battle for survival, but their victory might have started a larger war for the soul of galactic civilization itself. Ambassador Thexron stepped forward, his scales displaying patterns that none of the other delegates had ever seen before. A mixture of respect, fear, and something that might have been hope. The trial is concluded, he announced formally, but the real test of what you have accomplished begins now. The Council deliberations lasted for 3 standard galactic days, during which representatives from across known space debated the implications of Marcus and Zara's unprecedented trial success. The debate chambers echoed with arguments in dozens of languages as civilizations struggled to reconcile what they had witnessed with thousands of years of established legal and social precedent. Marcus and Zara waited in comfortable quarters, no longer prisoners but not yet free. Their bond had deepened further during the waiting period, allowing them to share thoughts and emotions with an intimacy that transcended normal communication. They could feel the tension and uncertainty radiating from the delegates throughout the station, but their shared consciousness provided an island of calm in the storm of galactic politics. Dr. Elena Vasquez visited them regularly, bringing updates from Earth and news of the broader galactic reaction to their trial. The response has been extraordinary, she reported during one visit. Some species are hailing this as the dawn of a new era of interspecies cooperation. Others are calling it a dangerous precedent that threatens the foundations of galactic law. What about Earth's position? Marcus asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Elena's expression grew somber. Officially, Earth still maintains that you acted without authorization. However, there's been a significant shift in public opinion back home. Humans are calling you a hero for standing up to alien injustice. The government is under enormous pressure to support you openly. Zara reached out through their mental link, sharing strength and comfort as Marcus processed the political implications of their situation. She had learned enough about human culture to understand that his sacrifice had cost him his official career, and possibly his citizenship. "It doesn't matter," Marcus said finally, squeezing Zara's hand. "Whatever happens next, I made the right choice." The breakthrough came on the fourth day when Arbiter Kelnara requested a private meeting with the bonded pair. Her ancient consciousness had been processing the implications of their trial for days, drawing upon knowledge and experience spanning geological ages. "Your success has created a crisis of understanding," she explained, her form more solid and focused than it had been during the trial. "For millennia, galactic civilization has been built upon the principle that diversity leads to conflict, that different species must be carefully managed and controlled to prevent chaos. Your bond suggests an alternative possibility that many find terrifying." "What kind of possibility?" Zara asked, though their shared consciousness already provided hints of the answer. "That diversity might actually be a source of strength rather than weakness," the Arbiter replied. "That beings from different worlds might achieve together what none could accomplish alone. Your mental and physical compatibility exceeded anything in our records, suggesting that interspecies cooperation could unlock potentials we never imagined." Marcus felt a surge of understanding. "That's why some delegates are afraid. We didn't just prove our bond was genuine, we proved that the entire galactic approach to managing different species might be wrong." The Arbiter's form pulsed with approval. "Precisely. Your trial has become a catalyst for broader questions about how civilized society should function. Some species see opportunity in what you've demonstrated. Others see existential threat to their power structures." The final council session was called that evening, with representatives from every known civilization in attendance either physically or through quantum communication links. The trial chamber had been reconfigured into a vast amphitheater that could accommodate the largest gathering in galactic history. Marcus and Zara entered the chamber hand in hand, their bond now visible to sensitive alien perceptions as a shimmering energy field that surrounded them both. The assembled delegates fell silent as they took their positions in the center of the space, awaiting the council's verdict. Councillor Vexhai floated forward to deliver the decision, her ethereal form radiating the gravity of the moment. "After extensive deliberation, the Galactic Council has reached a verdict regarding the trial of worthiness and its implications for interstellar law. The trial itself has been deemed valid and successfully completed," she announced, causing a ripple of relief through Marcus and Zara's supporters. "The original charges against Zara of Velkos are hereby dismissed, and both participants are granted full freedom of movement throughout council space." Cheers erupted from the human delegation and several alien species that had supported their cause. However, Vexhai raised her tentacles for continued silence, indicating that more significant announcements were to follow. "Furthermore," she continued, "the Council recognizes the unprecedented nature of the bond demonstrated between claimant and claimed. Your success has revealed possibilities for interspecies cooperation that warrant further investigation and support." Ambassador Thexron stepped forward, his scales displaying patterns of formal ceremony. "By unanimous vote of the assembled civilizations, Marcus Chen and Zara of Velkos are hereby appointed as the first interspecies harmony ambassadors, charged with exploring and developing new models of cooperation between different galactic cultures." The announcement stunned the chamber into silence. No one had expected the council to not only vindicate their actions but to elevate them to official positions within galactic society. Dr. Kimari's crystalline form erupted in brilliant light patterns of celebration, while other delegates expressed approval in their species' traditional manners. "Your bond will serve as a living example of what becomes possible when beings truly unite across species barriers," Vexhai explained. "You will travel throughout council space, working with different civilizations to develop new approaches to interspecies relations based on cooperation rather than mere coexistence." Marcus felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of the responsibility being placed upon them. Through their mental link, he sensed Zara's similar mixture of honor and apprehension. Neither had expected their desperate act of survival to evolve into a mission that could reshape galactic civilization. Executor Prime Zixthon approached with mechanical precision, his synthetic consciousness having reached new understanding. Through observing their trial, "I wish to volunteer the Synthetic Collective as your first assignment," he announced. "Our species has struggled to achieve meaningful connections with organic beings. Perhaps your example can bridge that gap." The offer opened floodgates as representative after representative stepped forward with requests for assistance. Species that had been in conflict for centuries wanted to explore whether the harmony Marcus and Zara had achieved might be possible on a broader scale. Isolated civilizations requested help integrating into galactic society. Even the most advanced species expressed curiosity about the potentials they had demonstrated. As the formal session concluded, Marcus and Zara found themselves surrounded by beings from across the galaxy, all eager to learn from their experience. Elena approached through the crowd, her face beaming with pride and excitement. "Earth's government has issued a formal statement," she announced. "They're declaring you heroes of humanity and offering full support for your new role. The political winds have shifted completely in your favor." Later, as they stood together on the observation deck of their newly assigned diplomatic vessel, Marcus and Zara gazed out at the stars that now represented their domain of responsibility. Their bond had grown so strong that they could share the wonder and anticipation each felt, without need for words. "Do you think we can really make a difference?" Zara asked through their mental connection. Marcus smiled, feeling her love and determination flowing through their link like warm sunlight. "We already have. Look at how much has changed just from one human standing up for one Velkari refugee. Imagine what we might accomplish together across an entire galaxy." Their ship began its journey toward the first of many worlds that had requested their assistance. Behind them, the station where Zara had once awaited execution now served as a monument to the power of compassion over law, of unity over division. Ahead lay countless civilizations ready to discover what wonders might emerge when differences became strengths rather than obstacles. The galaxy had witnessed the birth of a new paradigm for interspecies relations, born from a moment when human emotion met alien injustice and chose to stand firm. Marcus and Zara's bond had become proof that the universe's greatest treasures were found not in conquest or control, but in the courage to reach across the void and offer one being's hand to another in their darkest hour. Their story would be told for generations across the galaxy, inspiring countless others to look beyond fear and prejudice toward the infinite possibilities that awaited when different worlds chose to build bridges instead of walls. The execution that never happened had instead birthed a revolution of hope that would echo through the stars for eons to come.